People are not trees. Unlike trees, we don't even attempt to grow wherever we are planted. Instead, we uproot ourselves and we search out the places where we believe we have the greatest potential to grow and thrive. And then that's the place where we choose to take root. What that means to employers and to managers is that we need to develop and challenge our valued employees if we expect to keep them around. My aim today is to offer you some new ideas about how to do that. Whether you're in talent management or recruiting or working as a people manager, these are all ideas that in some way you can implement. And each one will lead to people desiring to get more deeply rooted inside your organization. So this is a workshop. It's about putting people first so they can grow and will plant themselves longer term in your organization. Before we start, just let me take a moment to properly introduce myself. I'm Deb Calvert, and for those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting or working with, let me just tell you a few things. I'm the author of the Connect to Lead, Connect to Win, and Connect to Sell blogs, and the president of People First Productivity Solutions, where we build organizational strength by putting people first. Speaking of connections, please be sure to link with me on Twitter or Google Plus or LinkedIn. You'll see my handle there on screen along with my email address. I work as an executive coach and as an architect of corporate leadership development programs. My background includes working as an HR director for a Fortune 500 media company. And these days, I'm finding myself working with a number of executives who are challenged by turnover and are scrambling to identify new ways or improved ways to retain talent. So that's why I wanted to offer this webinar today. If you're new to Bright Talk, let me just point out a couple of important features for you. First, be sure to notice the button called Attachments. It's in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. I've included some bonus resources for you there, and I'll mention those as we come to them. Second, you can subscribe to this channel and get more content each month, if you'd like to, about topics like this. Bright Talk makes it really easy to stay on top of what's new and what's relevant for you. Okay, enough of the commercial stuff. Now let's get back to business. What I'd like to do here is start by looking at some undeniable workplace truths. We all know that there is an increasingly competitive job market taking shape for a lot of reasons. Chief among those are that we have baby boomers aging out of the workplace, and the generation behind them, Gen X, the millennials, they are, first of all, not as high in terms of numbers, so we have a lesser sized workplace pool to choose from, fewer candidates out there. But not only that, 2/3 of millennials already in their jobs are expressing a desire to leave their current organizations in the near future. And those two factors together are a big part of why over 90% of executives are highly concerned. And what they're highly concerned about, first and foremost, more than any other human capital issue, they're concerned about the lack of leadership development inside their own organization, because there aren't people to keep those leadership roles, nor are there people developing to be able to be prepared to take those roles. And with all that happening, it begs two questions. The first one is, where are you going to go for these people, and how sustainable is that revolving door? Inside, if the torch isn't being passed, you're losing institutional knowledge and workplace culture. And then on top of that, because this is happening everywhere, you can't count on being able to go outside your organization to recruit ready now people for leadership roles and other roles. See, their bosses are part of the 93% too. They're also concerned about the lack of development inside their own organizations. No one, anywhere, is getting the development you need them to have in order to help you long term. In other words, there's no choice. you must be developing people and retaining people. It's critical to the future of your company in ways that have never been experienced on such a large scale before. So a good place to start would be to get to the underlying causes of why it is that millennials want to leave their current organizations. Here's one reason. It's a big one. Those employees who are considered to be high potential, and by the way, this is a global problem, so high potential at companies across the world, those employees are not satisfied with the development efforts that are being made available to them, and because they're not satisfied, they're leaving those organizations. Now that quote, that's from a really important report. I suggest you get a look at that. But that same report, it delves into details about how widespread this concern is with executives. This is really, really widespread. And this data, though, it's not just isolated to this one study. There are daily deluges, it seems, with studies and with research reports that are finding the very same thing. And it's this desire for development plus one other factor, the boredom factor. And those two things, they do go hand in hand. People are bored because they don't feel challenged. When people feel challenged, they appreciate the development, they are less bored, and they're more likely to stay inside an organization and to plant themselves to get those deeper roots inside that organization that challenges them, where they feel stimulated, and they're not bored in the work that they're doing. Giving people a challenge stimulates them and engages them. And we know this from the work of Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi at the University of Chicago. He developed this simple graphic known as the flow zone. It works sort of like this. If we take the level of skill here on the lower axis and we think about the level of skill it takes to do a job. You've got people, they might be your new hires or others, they're coming in to take on a task they haven't done before. That's a low level of skill over on the left. And over time, people develop higher levels of skills. So there are some skill levels that are high. We just have a simple grid going from 0 to 10, low skill to high skill. And on the vertical axis, we have the level of challenge, and that is relative to the level of skill. Some work tasks, some types of work present a very low level of challenge for people at any skill level. So you might be low skill and the challenge might be low, and those two things would fit together. They'd be down here toward the lower left corner. As your skill gets higher, in order to stay in the flow where you do your optimum work, it's like being in the zone where you really are challenged to concentrate, but not stressed out by too much challenge that's not able to be met by your current skill level. Right? You're in the flow. This is where you're in the zone. You're concentrating. You're enjoying the work. You're mentally stimulated by the work. This is where we want people to be, right in that flow zone where the level of challenge is just a little bit beyond the current level of skill, because that's where people are going to have that sense of being in the flow. But something happens. More often than not, people aren't in the flow. They're in one of two other places on this chart. They might be in the panic zone, meaning the challenge significantly exceeds their current skill level. We've all been there. It doesn't feel very good. It's stressful. When that challenge exceeds your ability, you're stressed, you're feeling like you can't do it or that you can't succeed doing it. That's not productive. Even more dangerous and perhaps more prevalent is the drone zone. That's where your level of skill is significantly higher than your level of challenge. That's where you're bored. And this is where, if we have people around us who are bored, who are not challenged, who are not in the flow, this is where people are feeling like they aren't being given opportunities to develop, to grow. This is where people begin looking outside our organizations, looking for places to move on. So we want to keep people in the flow, and as often as possible, getting them back into the flow. One idea that you might take away from this workshop is to take this slide or map out your own grid and then plot your people, the people around you that you work most closely with. Plot them and think about their average work week. How often do you feel like they are in the flow? More importantly, how often would they say that they're in the flow versus in the panic zone or the drone zone? And how can you support them by giving them more opportunities to get into the flow? We'll talk about this more as we go. But if this is what it's all about, if this is how we can address boredom, then what can we do? How can we develop people and keep them in the flow? I feel like I should clarify one other thing here before we move forward. See, I hear very often from executives and the folks in HR that millennials are impatient for advancement, that they feel entitled to be the CEO before they've even done the entry-level work. And then I talk to people who are being characterized in that way, and it's true, they want advancement. Advancement is what all of us are probably looking for in some sense, but this does not necessarily mean that they're asking for a promotion. More often than not, advancement means that they're being given opportunities to do new things, opportunities to stretch their wings, to be entrusted to try new things, to be heard, to be consulted and asked for their opinion, to be dignified in ways that help them develop their critical thinking and take steps, even baby steps, toward next levels. So instead of thinking very narrowly about job titles or pay increases or career ladders, it may be useful to think more broadly about what can be done to help your people be better and more capable tomorrow than they are today. How can you be expanding their capacity regardless of the job title, amount of pay, or positioning and steps on the career ladder? And that is satisfactory. When people feel that the company and that their managers are investing in them in this way to develop their capacity, for them that's very, very gratifying. You might be, though, thinking about something else. You might be thinking along these lines and considering the reasons people want to grow and develop. You can certainly understand why employers sometimes express concern. That concern is that if they develop people, then those people will be more likely to go elsewhere because now they are, in fact, more employable. It's true. By strengthening people, you do make them more attractive to other employers. At the same time, you're making yourself as an organization more attractive to your employees so they'll stay there longer term. Inherently, you are also making them a hotter commodity in the job market. Investing money, investing time in your employees does put you at risk of watching that invested time and money walk out the door. So I can see why this will seem like a legitimate concern. But I'd have to press you to think about the alternative. What if you don't develop them and they stay? Do you really want people who aren't growing and therefore aren't fully motivated and engaged? I mean, long term, do you really want those people to stick around? Is that what you want your organization to be made up of? Think about this. What happens to an organization that retains people who are not capable of keeping up with changes? People who are not feeling good about their value in the marketplace, not having that level of esteem. I mean, this really isn't a very good alternative. Your turnover numbers might be lower, but I'll bet almost all your other numbers are going to be lower too. So let's proceed then with this need to develop people. What I'll be doing next is offering you several strategies. Most of them are not entirely new, but all of them are offered with a little twist so you can get started quickly or at least reframe these. And so you can even perhaps see these tried and true techniques in a new light. Let me start here. We all talk about delegating, and it seems to be very difficult for people to do. There's a degree of trust required, an investment of time, a feeling that if you delegate to someone who's already busy, that they may not be able to do the work as well as you could simply do it on your own. So there gets to be a bottleneck. At just about every company I work with more than half of the executive team and the management team, there's a bottleneck. Work that could be delegated but isn't being delegated for the reasons I mentioned and more. But the truth is, delegating is really important. It's important to the person doing the delegating so they can free up time for higher level thinking, more strategic work. But this reason, one that often gets overlooked, is the most important reason of all to delegate. And that's because when you delegate, you develop people. You develop yourself by freeing up that time to do other kinds of work. And you delegate and develop the people behind you, the people coming up through the organization. Without ever giving them a promotion, you give them greater capacity when you delegate with the intent to develop them. And then, when the next level job opportunity presents itself, people will be ready. They'll be able to step into those roles more readily and more successfully because, number one, they've been developed, and number two, as a result of that development and that investment being made, they stuck around long enough. They waited for the opportunity. So what I have on screen for you are 8 strategies. Actually, these are 8 imperatives. These are 8 things that you must do in order to delegate effectively. And if you do all 8, you'll find that delegating for development can become a way of life for you as a manager, or a way of life for all the managers in your organization. Delegating without all 8 of these becomes an exercise in futility. It doesn't go anywhere. It frustrates the person doing the delegating as well as the person who ends up in the panic zone, feeling like they've been tasked with doing something they're not really ready for. So following these 8 items gives you a blueprint for good delegating. By the way, over there in your attachments, there is an infographic that gives you the same information and a little bit more about delegating for development. What I'd like you to invite you to do with that infographic and with these 8 imperatives is to give yourself a challenge. It'll involve doing a little work, take about 30, 45 minutes to do it, but it will help you to shift your own paradigm so that you can think about delegating with the express purpose of developing people. This assignment goes like this. The first thing you do is you make a list, rapid fire, a list of all your recurring tasks, the things that you do in your day-to-day. That'll take you 10, 15 minutes. Don't overthink it, but just capture all those items, bullet point them, the things that you do over and over again. Step 2 is to look at each item on that list with a critical eye. And your critical review of each item on the list, what I want you to think about, to ask yourself, are these questions. First of all, who would do this if I were not able to do it any longer? Secondly, who would enjoy doing this? Third, who could learn from doing this? Who could develop, who could grow, who could benefit from doing these things, each item on the list? And then take the ones that aren't going to be high risk and delegate them, one at a time. Don't make yourself overwhelmed with the work of delegating, but one at a time. Start knocking those items off your list and delegating them using these 8 steps, delegating them effectively to people around you, whether they report to you or not. Delegate so that people can develop. Stick with it all the way through the 8 steps to enable that delegate, the person that you gave the work to enable them to be successful. And what will be happening is that you'll be freeing up your own time so you can develop at the same time you're helping others to develop through the work that they're doing. So this is just a little different thing, a little different way of looking at delegating. Let me give you another sort of obvious item, but again, reframing it. We all hear about coaching, and usually in organizations we hear about coaching in the context of performance. There's coaching for performance, and that's not the same as coaching for development. As a certified coach, I often get called in to coach people as sort of the last step, one life preserver we're going to throw to them before we go ahead and take the step of moving them out of the organization. And frankly, that's too late. I turn down those assignments because that's not what I believe coaching is really all about. Coaching to develop people starts much, much sooner. Coaching for development looks at the potential of the individual. It looks at the opportunities for the future of that individual, and it's guided by where that individual sees himself or herself being able to go in the future. See, coaching, it's not the same as managing. It's not the same as mentoring. Coaching, especially coaching for development, gives people an opportunity to set their own goals and then to have someone, the coach, facilitate all of the thought that needs to go into reaching those goals. How can we remove the barriers? How can we extract what you already know and cross-apply it in new ways? How can we get some self-discovery so that whatever your obstacles or barriers might be, whether real or perceived, how can you discover some ways on your own to work through those? How can you access your own resources? Coaching for development holds up a mirror for self-reflection so that people are able to become more autonomous in the work that they do. If you are interested in coaching the way I'm describing it, there's a whole another webinar. It's on this channel. Go take a look if you'd like to know more about that, or feel free to give me a call. I would be happy to coach people with you and for you, or to help you become this kind of a coach, one that develops people and gives them the desire as a result of that coaching to plant deeper roots and to stick longer term with your organization. So we've got delegating for development, coaching for development. Here's one more thing that you may already be doing, and with a little reframing, you could do differently so that it truly develops and engages people. One-to-one meetings. Usually, the one-to-one meeting between a manager and a direct report is a weekly or a bi-weekly review. It's a task list. It's a report out on the work that's already been done. It might involve a little performance review, some feedback, and then it talks about the next steps. Here's what you now need to do. And it's focused entirely on the work at hand. That's good. It's important to have those check-ins. In fact, that sort of thing appears on the list of 8 items to do with effective delegation. But there's something missing. And what's missing in the mini performance review, the check-in on the work, what's missing is the piece that is all about developing the individual. The one-on-one is typically not very individualized, nor is it very development-focused. So we want to reframe what this meeting looks like and make sure that within that meeting, we're including ample time for people to feel supported and to find ways that they can be developing. Here's one way that an HR leader described the importance of the one-to-one meeting. This particular HR leader said that large numbers of disengaged employees claim insufficient development opportunities as a major issue. Regular one-on-ones and career discussions are often considered infeasible due to a lack of time, but managers need to make time for regular career discussions and one-to-ones. It's their duty to make people successful and to help them achieve their full potential. In doing so, managers build relationships and prevent employees from disengagement and leaving the company. So just keep this in mind. You spend so much time finding great people, it's worth helping them grow to be the best you can be. And your one-to-one is the very best place to do that despite the time constraints. The one-to-one meeting is going to break through levels of disengagement. It's going to help people achieve their full potential. It's going to help people feel they belong in the organization. And you'll identify ways to delegate, coach, and support them in their development. There is another attachment. It's a blueprint for effective one-to-one meetings that will help you see ways that you can divide the time allocated. It's a blueprint that we've developed through research and through helping executives and managers shift what they do in their one-to-one meeting time. Okay, equally obvious. If we are to develop people, perhaps we would give them some training. But I think this also gets really misunderstood. This is not about going out and getting a huge new budget for additional training. It's about using the training that you already have, the resources that you already have, and applying it and getting credit for it in a way that's more meaningful. You probably already do some of these things. Whichever ones you don't do, think about offering. Whichever ones you already do, think about ways that you can make sure people understand this is for their own development. It's not just for the company to get what they need. It's a way for the company to offer a benefit to each and every one of its employees. So you might already offer onboarding. Maybe you offer onboarding, and within your onboarding, you talk about the values of the organization. You talk about the fundamentals of how to do the job this individual has been hired for. Within your onboarding, are you spotlighting development opportunities that people will have in the duration of their career with your company? If not, I strongly suggest putting this front and center. Link the development that you offer employees directly into your values, directly into the fundamentals of the work that they're going to do, the functional work. Think about ways you can offer some soft skills training, occasionally, brown bag lunch. I'm talking about sort of organic, inside your own organization, doesn't cost a dime, kinds of training that will help people to feel supported and developed. And then think about ways you can bring in your technical experts inside your company to build business acumen and hard skills. Think about what needs to happen so there's development for next level jobs, so that even if people are not being promised or groomed for those next level jobs, their capacity in their current roles will continually be expanding. And something that matters a lot to millennials is leadership. Again, totally separate from a job title or a position of authority, leadership at every level, the ability to be thought of as someone who can influence and make an impact and make a difference, that's something that matters. Is it something that you're offering? If you don't have a budget for emerging leaders training, that's okay. There are lots and lots of places where you can send people, including another attachment, a link actually that I've offered you here. This is completely free. Here at People First Productivity Solutions, we believe in this too. We believe in the importance of dignifying people, leaders at every level, giving people, no matter what their age or stage or rank in the company, an opportunity to see themselves as leaders and to unleash their own leadership potential. So you can use this link, give it to as many people as you'd like. There's no cost, there's no obligation. They won't even get spam email follow-ups. It's just a series of 10 email leadership development training courses that they'll get. One course, 10 emails. And we've been offering this for over 5 years. People enjoy it, they like it, they benefit from it, and they use it long term. So please feel free to take that and run with it. Now, beyond skills training, there are things that you can do in the day-to-day. development work doesn't have to be separate from the work that people are already doing. One way that people feel they're developing is if they're given opportunities to contribute in a meaningful way to the organization or team. You can help people to feel that and to actually experience that if you include them in decision making. That doesn't mean that you give them the decision, but it means that you are more transparent about the decision and you're more inclusive in the information gathering that goes into the decisions. Set the boundaries. Be sure if you're going to be making a decision or convening a task force that people know whether or not they are a decision maker or a decision influencer. Let people know that their responsibilities are either to gather information that may inform the decision, or whether they are part of the brainstorming group, or whether they're one of the checks and balances who are reviewing the decision criteria. Frame it up in a way, though, that people are involved and they understand what the parameters are. Let them communicate the decision out. It also is very ennobling for people to be able to be part of the group that understands the decision and communicates it farther and wider. Change management, we know that change management basics say that we get people's input on the front end, we take under advisement what they tell us about the change that's being made, and then we involve a larger group of people to go out and share the decisions that are made. So if you want to accelerate changes that you're trying to make, you might involve more people. And if you want to assess what the impact has been, this is your inner circle, the people that you've involved in the decision, this expanded group. They can give you information back and forth across the organization. What happens when you do this is, of course, people feel that they have been involved, but also they develop higher level kinds of thinking because they now see what happens. It doesn't seem like that decision occurred in a vacuum. They don't feel separated from it or isolated outside of it. They feel included, and they develop strategic thinking because they saw all the steps that went into it. So think about your decision making and how you can develop people using decision making, and then you might also consider mentoring. Mentoring has many different variations, many different ways that you can do something with this. You might appoint people, even those who are really new to your organization, those who are relatively young and inexperienced. They might be subject matter experts. And because they are subject matter experts, they are able to mentor people who are not subject matter experts in this one narrow particular area. This is sometimes called reverse mentoring. Mentoring, unlike coaching, unlike managing, it's best when it's narrowly defined by the subject matter. So where I might be a mentor to you in one very narrow area, you might be a mentor to me in a completely different narrow area where I don't have the same level of expertise that you do. When somebody is a mentor, this could be one-to-one. You might also think of it in small groups, though. You've got people in your organization who just want a chance to show what they know. And they could offer a brown bag lunch, a small group mentoring session where they present training in a small area where they've got some expertise. This dignifies and ennobles them. It also helps them to want to plant roots in your organization. It doesn't have to be formal. Your mentoring program doesn't have to require dollars invested and systems developed. It can be very informal, very organic. People who are being mentored will then grow, as will the people who are serving as mentors. Now, this next and last slide, this is a whole host of other miscellaneous strategies. Think about any of these that you're not already using, because you can be providing a lot if you're open to the idea of letting these things sort of coexist. One thing that I think gets underutilized tremendously is the massive online open enrollment courses that are out there at colleges and universities. They're already there, and they're totally free. So make this part of your L&D effort, your learning and development, because if you just open this up and let people go out and access what they are looking for, give them some opportunity, some self-determination about their own continual education in areas that are of individual interest, in areas that make sense for next level development. If they see how much is out there and you're willing to give them a little time or a little permission or encouragement to go out and access these things, all the better. In addition to colleges and universities, you've got places like Udemy online where courses are cropping up, and there are very, very good courses that are free or low charge that people can find ways to develop. Inside the organization, maybe you want to run some MBTI training so people get to know themselves better, or emotional intelligence training, or DISC, or any of the other number of ways that by becoming more self-aware, they develop communication, conflict resolution, decision-making skills, and a whole host of other applications. Think about the things in your community. Is it continuing ed through your community college? Is it a Toastmasters group? Is it something that they can do with board service? Lots of ways within your community that development opportunities can be interfaced with what you're already doing or hoping to do for people. And then back inside the organization, there are ways that you can offer job shadowing, informational interviews with senior executives, whatever it is that you have the appetite for. All easy to implement. None of these have to be systematic. It's about meeting the individual needs of people who you want to develop and keep. Another thing that millennials say would be meaningful to them is basic life skills training. So who can you bring in that talks over, a brown bag lunch or an afternoon social? Who is it that can come in and talk about how to prepare for buying your first house? Or what do you really need to know about life insurance? Life skills training that helps to get that work-life balance and that shows that you are supporting long-term the development of people, not just the development of skills needed to do today's work, but skills needed to develop people all the way around. Think about book clubs, professional organizations, providing access to those. If you don't already have them, consider the benefit of creating individual learning plans. That doesn't mean that you, the manager or the HR person, you're not creating those plans. You just give the framework. And then people develop their own individual learning plans. And you might look for themes that crop out of the group of those, and then use these to choose other items on this list that might have the broadest appeal. And this last bullet, if you've never done this, I strongly recommend it. You probably already conduct exit interviews. So as people are leaving, you find out what would have been more satisfying to them, what might have kept them employed. How about flipping that around? Conduct a stay interview with your current employee base. What is it that would help you want to stay longer term with our organization? You're not making promises, you're only gathering information, but even in the process of gathering that information, you're dignifying your employees. You're letting them know that they're heard and that their opinions matter. Well, I encourage you to do something, anything, even small, to signal your intentions for developing talent. The old school way of doing business decades ago was that, hey, we are a solid employer, we have a great reputation because we pay well, and we expect people to stay here long term if they're loyal. That's just not the way things work anymore. If you hope to be an employer who retains people and who develops people for the future, they expect to see your loyalty to them come first. And it's not unfair for that expectation to be out there, because the truth is employees now have the upper hand. There are going to be fewer of them moving around more often between organizations, and the new reality is that if we want to be competitive, we've got to give a little in order to get a lot back in return. If you're looking for some help with this, here at People First Productivity Solutions, we can help. We have tools, ideas, we can provide consulting and coaching. We build organizational strength by putting people first. This is the work we do, and we'd be happy to help you, whether it be just a brief free consultation or whether it be something longer term and broader that can be a benefit to you. Please let me know how we can help. You see my email address there on screen. Please visit our website, connect with us on social media, and whatever it is, with us or without us, whatever you do, put your people first. Help them to find ways they can develop while they are still inside your organization so that long-term they'll remain with your organization.